this here. Okay. So we have a lot of stuff to get covered today. So let's jump into it and go over the homework really quick. Oh, okay.
Oh, the homework. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I struggled. Yeah.
And sorry, I'll share my screen here in 1 second.
Yeah. I'm almost close.
Okay, so we had, for the homework, it was a task tracker. So how'd you guys do on that? I know.
I had double marking the task off. I'm still can't get it. That's exactly where I am, and I got it to where it's binding, but where it's binding is believe. So it's going true false. So it's not actually marking them off. I have it binding, but not the class is not going to the correct class. I can't do that.
Okay, well let's dive in and we'll just go through it and then hopefully they'll answer any questions. So, and my repo is out of date here.
I learned a lot while I was trying to figure it out, though. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so inside a classroom. I think I called it task tracker. Let me check and confirm that. Okay, task tracker. Yep. Okay. So routing, no. We'll just use regular CSS because that's some of you guys are limited to. Did you guys struggle with any other parts besides marking the task complete, like adding the priority or the category? You guys had no problems with that?
No, I didn't have any problems up until marking it complete. I didn't get the default on the priority to show.
Okay. Well, let's go over all that. Okay, so I'm going to go into my task tracker here, and here, I'll make that a little bit bigger. Hopefully that's easier. Okay, so here we'll just go ahead, because we're good developers, I'll just do a ng serve, so we just see that everything works. And then I'm going to go into source, my application. Here's my, my basic pieces. I'm going to go ahead and just wipe everything out of app component. We do that every time. So I'm going to save that. It's going to build. And then local host 4200. So awesome. I erased everything, so we have nothing here. So that's perfect. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to create another tab, and I'm going to go ahead and do an ng generate component task list. So we could have done everything inside of app component, but here we can just be more organized. And you'll see later, today we'll start doing multiple components, and you'll see why this helps being organized. So so my task list component, I'm going to go ahead and add that here. I know that's going to start out with app task-list. So just saving this, I should immediately see here task list works. Okay, so step 1, well, almost done. We still have to add our forms module to app.module.ts, so let's get that done. So I'm going to import forms module from Angular whack forms. And then we're just going to put it inside our imports section. So, okay, and nothing broke. Awesome. Okay, so next we want to just display a list of tasks. So it displays data in a table. Okay, awesome. So here, let me copy this in. So now we're inside of our task list component. So I'm just going to open up our HTML and our actual component here. So I'm actually just going to erase all these things here just because we don't need them right now. So, and then I'm going to say tasks equals and then my array of tasks. So just having just that alone, well, and let me know guys if you have trouble seeing this or anything. Doing that alone will let me just display these with a table. We're going to do a tr. I'm going to go ahead and do a header for the name of the task. Let's see, what else do I have? I have the name, category, and priority, right? So category and then priority. Then we're going to do a tr here, and we're going to make this loop, right? So let task of tasks. And then finally, we're just going to go ahead and do our bindings here. Task.name. And we're going to copy this a couple times. Category, and then priority. So saving this, I should get a nice fancy table. Well, fancy is a strong word. I should just get a table with our items in there. Okay, so next, adding new tasks. So we want the ability to add tasks. We're going to create an input field for our task name, add button, quick handler, and the button should be disabled if task name is blank. Okay, cool. So we've all seen this in class, right? So a lot of this isn't new. It's just more practice for you guys. So I'm going to create a new task object here. And then we're just going to bind to that. Oops. And we can, if you guys, are you guys comfortable with new task or just task? Because I can use task.
I use new task, but doesn't matter.
Okay. One thing, let me see what I did in my here. Okay, I didn't specify it was new task or not. So it doesn't really matter. The thing, if you use task, we can go ahead and have allow you to update tasks too. We haven't talked about that yet. But that's something you could use it for new tasks, doesn't matter. But you can make it that whenever you click on one, you can have the ability to update as well. So I'll use task for now in case if we have time to go over that. So okay, so input our banana in a box for our ng model. This is just going to be task.name. We need a name parameter for it as well, and I'm just going to add a placeholder that says just task name. And then finally, we just need a button. Quick handler is just going to be add task. So this should give us everything. Since you guys have no problems with this, we can go ahead and just add in immediately here our disabled equals if no task.name, right? So far, so good. And we're going to test this really quick. So, okay, cool. Type something in. I'm going to hit add task. It's obviously going to explode because add task is not defined in our component yet, so no big deal. Let's go in here and we are going to define add task. So add tasks. Easiest way I think would be just saying this.tasks.push this.task and then saying oops. See, it's interesting, right? See, I'm not sure if you guys have run into any TypeScript problems. It's complaining because the format of task is just an empty object. It does not have a name or a category or priority type on it. So we could add those as empty values in here. That would be category, probably like the right way of doing it. So then it has the same exact format. The other way that you could do it, if you had a bunch of properties and you didn't want to do that, you could always say task : any. So and this complaint just because of that. But this up here is preferred. And one thing that we have not had time to do, guys, is talk about interfaces and things like that. I want to teach you guys how Angular works, not so much how TypeScript works. TypeScript is, very useful, and it'll save you a lot of like heartache and headache, right, Seth?
Yes.
When it's used correctly.
Yes.
So here we're gonna add the task. If we push the task on, I'm sure you guys already ran into this, but if we push without resetting this.task, then what we have is, if I add something, I see it here, but then as soon as I start typing, notice that these two are bound because it's pointing to the same object, right? So it doesn't help me at all. So that's why we have to reset what this.task is pointed to. So an easiest way is just reset it back to whatever the defaults were here. So again, adding something in there, it resets. We can add more, and life is good. So adding new task names. Okay, so now the task category. Okay, so very similar to what we did here, right? We're just going to go ahead and add a couple more fields to it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a little bit of room here. So I'm going to add a select box here. And usually everybody has their own way of doing it. Mine, I always do like ng model pretty much last. I'll do my HTML attributes first and then use my Angular attributes last. Because that way you can quickly scan the last piece of the tag and see if there's an ngIf or ngModel or anything. So, but it's totally preference there. So ngModel is going to equal our task.category. So, how many of you guys create the tasks here as a manual list? Or I'm sorry, the categories in here as options.
I did.
Okay, the other way that we could do this is by doing, so obviously we need an option, right? But we could do an ng4 saying I'm going to say just categories. And then here just do cat. And then here I'm going to say value equals cat. So I could do this, and what this lets me do is I can define my categories now inside of code where I can say my categories are home, work, school. So if you had a whole bunch of categories, or they were controlled in a database where they weren't hard-coded, this is the way that you would do it. You ng4, and we don't have to bind, like right now I'm binding value. I can make it like this and turn this into just an expression just like cat here for category. So if I do something like this, let's make sure this actually works. I should be able to drop this down. Okay, so I have my home, work, and school. So it's no different than the way that you guys did it. It just lets us control it in our code. So if we feed this from a database or something, or if we wanted to, add play in there or whatever, it's always easier to edit code than it is to edit HTML markup, right? Especially if you're trying to do it dynamically. So, okay, here. So task priority now, we're going to do same thing. Inputs 1 through 5 for task priority should default to 3 and be required. Sort the tasks. Okay, so let's do these things one at a time. First, let's go ahead and add our inputs for this. So this here is going to be priority. And this type is going to be a number. And I said between 1 and 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a minimum of 1 and a max of 5. Because HTML lets us do that. Priority here and priority. And guys, just so you know, I'm not changing this up as I go just to, one up you or anything like that. I just want to show you that we could do this a lot of different ways, and just so you guys are seeing other approaches. So I don't want you to think I'm changing the homework or what I expected you guys to do at all. Okay. So should default to 3 and be required. Okay, so right now we should have, okay, so it's going to default to 3 automatically, and that's controlled with whatever our defaults, our defaults for the task.
I struggled with that. It's so simple.
It's simple after you see it, right?
Yeah.
So now what we want to do is sort these things by the priority. So we saw this that we could do this a couple different ways, right? The easiest is, and this is where we're going to bring our constructor back. So right now, these are all of our properties here. Here's our add task. What we need to do is have another function called sort tasks. And we don't actually have to do this with the function. It just saves us from doubling code. So I'm going to say this.tasks equals this dot tasks dot sort, and then our usual A and B, and I'm going to do A dot priority minus B dot priority, and I already know I screwed this up. This needs to be
B, then I.
yeah, B minus A. Yep. It's one of those things you have a 50-50 shot. So if you get it wrong the first time, you can so I wrote wonderful code. I'm not calling it anywhere, right? So I'm going to bring back my friend Mr. Constructor because I want that code to run immediately. So this dot sort tasks. And then I also want my sort tasks to run after we add a new task, right? As soon as we push it, I want to go ahead and call sort tasks. So, okay, so now our program is getting a little bit of complexity here, so this is good. So, okay, so our stuff is sorted. So if I add something for play and it's 4, and this is going to be Nintendo Switch, that's pretty important to me. So, okay, it goes where it needs to. Right now, these aren't defaulted, that's okay. But we can add something without adding a category, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. So we're going to say that this thing is going to be disabled if there's no task name or there's no task dot category. Category. I don't have to worry about priority because it's default. I mean, technically, I guess you could erase the priority, so I should be here. Or no task dot priority. Let's just go ahead and do that. So we have all that working now. So okay, so I can't add something unless it has a priority or a category. So all that is good. The last thing was mark tasks complete. So this is where some of you guys struggled. So I had a button next to each task that would toggle its done property. So let's go ahead and do that. So we can do this a couple different ways. I could do this. I said add a button. We can make these just double click and it'll get marked done. I'll go ahead and just do it the way that I asked you guys to do it with the button. So I'm going to add a button here, and I'm just going to say click is, I'm just going to say toggle task. And we're going to pass in the current task that we're looping through, right? Because if I just call toggle task, I have no idea what task I'm trying to toggle. So we're going to do that, and then I'm just going to say here toggle. And then I also need a way to see the current state of it. So also in this TD where this button is, I'm just going to go ahead and output task dot done, completed. What did I tell you guys to use?
Yeah, got done.
It's done property. Okay, cool. So, and first of all, our code here is probably going to freak out here in a second because we don't have a done property anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and say, oops. Toggle task. I'm going to say task dot done equals bang task dot done. So let's see what happens now. So right now I can toggle and I see true, false, false. Okay, so this is basically working. It's very, very ugly and stuff, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and get it to, we wanted it to strike out and gray out the tasks and as if it's marked completed. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So for that, we're going to use ng class, right? So we can go ahead or just use a class binding, but we're going to do it on the entire TR. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say class.done equals task.done. So whenever, if task.done is true, then my entire TR will have a done class on it. And let's just go ahead and confirm this because sometimes it's easier just to see this. So here's my TR for clean the garage. I hit toggle and now I have a class of done. right? So that's awesome. That means that all I need to do is inside my CSS, I need to say .done. For my TDs, I want to go ahead and say color is gray and text decoration strikeout, or is it, what is it, line through? Okay. So if I toggle, okay, look at that. That's pretty close. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit less ugly with the button. So what I'm going to do is inside my button text, I'm going to go ahead and basically do a ternary operator and say here task.done. Have you guys have seen ternary, right? The question and the colon.
Yeah. It's like an if and else.
It's what, I'm sorry?
Like an if else.
Yep, it's exactly what it is. Here, I'm going to redo this. So if it's done, if we click the button, it's going to say mark open. Otherwise, it's going to say mark done. So mark done. So if it's done, we can go ahead and toggle it. So one other way that we can do this without this, ugly button is we can just add a click handler, like a double click handler on the TR, right? So I can do, oh, actually, I have no idea what it is. Seth, is it double click like that?
I don't know. I've never done a double.
I have never done it either. Guys, we're going to learn something together here. All right. So if I double click, let's see if that's the way we do it. Nope. Okay, so let's look this up. Angular 6, double click handler.
It's DBL click.
DBL?
Yeah, DBL click. It looks like.
Okay. DBL. Is it with the capital C?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay, lowercase c. Okay, awesome. So we can go ahead and toggle these things, and we can still use our buttons. So pretty cool. The last thing that we want to do is sort these. So if it's done, to move it to the bottom, right? Well, we kind of have the mechanics for all that already there in place, because what we have to do now is after we toggle the task. Sorry? After we toggle a task, we just want to call this.sort tasks. And then this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because inside of our sort tasks, we need to make this a little bit different, right? Before we were sorting just on one property. Now we have two properties to sort on. So it gets a little bit tricky. So the first thing, what we want to do is move all the dones to the bottom, right? So we can go ahead and, so here we're going to erase this first. Well, first let's do our property here. Before we had this, right? If b.property minus a.property, so we're going to turn this into a couple if statements, and we're going to break this out. This is the shorthand way of doing it, but what this actually implies is if b.priority, I'm sorry, I said property earlier, b.property, b.priority, if it's greater than a.priority, return 1. If b.priority is less than a.priority, return -1. And then finally, if they're the same, you return 0. So this is kind of how sorting works. And then we're going to do the same exact thing for our dones. We're going to say that if b.done, if b.done and, oh, I suck. If a, we can do b. If b.done and no a.done, we want to move that down. Oops, and then it's going to complain. Yep, go ahead.
It's called a bubble sort.
And that is bubble sort, yep. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. I think JavaScript, it should do like a radix sort or something, but when the way that we're doing it, it's basically a bubble sort, so.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
So here we have to add our done property, because it's going to complain that this.task doesn't have a done property onto it. So let's go ahead and add that in. And then finally, our new tasks, we're going to make sure that all these, and notice that, TypeScript is really smart. It's going to complain right here at this.task. We're missing the done property, right? Showing us that, hey, this is what everything else has. Why doesn't this one here have it? So it's really good about preventing us from having mistakes. So, okay, so let's do that one more time here. So we just want to do the opposite now. So if b.done and a. isn't done, we're going to go ahead and sort that up. And let's see, hopefully I'm doing that right. So far, so if I clean garage, okay, so we're sorting the wrong way. That's okay. So I want to go ahead and make this negative and this one here positive, and let's see what happens. Okay. And if we uncheck, then they'll go back to their original order. Awesome. So that there was probably a little bit more complicated. And let me see, was there anything else in the homework? No, that was it. What questions do you guys have on that? Because I know I went through that pretty quick. And I'm sure I did it pretty differently than you guys did it too, so.
No, I see exactly where I went wrong. On the toggle, I was trying to say this task instead of task got done.
Okay.
And that's where I was fighting with it.
And Cheryl, you found your mistakes too?
I don't know. I'm looking at it right now. Now it's like getting
You
nothing.
did that and it was like, that wasn't working. That's exactly what I did. So,
Don't know.
Let me see. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. Let me go over my agenda list. Okay, so we're gonna go over Bootstrap, single page applications, and routing. Do you guys want to take like 5 minutes and wrap up your homework, add the missing pieces, or you guys just want to do that later?
I understand the concept
Okay.
of it, and I can look at it, and I'll figure out what I've done, but
Okay.
just the time, I understand.
Okay, well, let's dive in. And the first thing I want to show you guys, let me present my screen again because I suck at doing that. So far, all of our stuff that we've built, I'm going to just add Bootstrap onto my task application so I don't create a new one. This is relatively easy, but it's going to look way, way, way more complicated than the way that we did it before. Well, there's two ways to do it, right? There's the way that if we want to add Bootstrap, we can go into the source and inside our index.html here, and we can go ahead and find the Bootstrap CDN. So where's our Bootstrap CDN? So I'm going to show you two ways to do it. So if you forget the other way I show you, which I'm going to call the right way, this is the quick way, so at least you could do this. So this here is going to be our there we go. Okay. Copy the whole thing. So our link, so we do this, we refresh, and we have Bootstrap here. The only way we can tell is the font is slightly different because we're not using any of the other Bootstrap properties, right? But if we add Bootstrap in here and we go into our HTML and I add a class of table, and my inputs, if I add a class on these, class of form control, oh, there we go. And then our button, finally, a class of BTN primary or whatever class, then we're going to obviously see a lot of Bootstrap stuff. So the form elements, they default to be full width. So obviously, for doing something like this, we would just go ahead and wrap all these things in in a row, and then go ahead and do div class col3 or whatever for all of our individual pieces here. And I'll go ahead and just do this really quick here. Oops. Okay, so doing that, I have, okay, awesome. So I can add some padding. The one thing that I didn't do is inside of my app component here, we just have our one tag. So anything with Bootstrap, we always need to throw it into a div class container. That basically just adds our padding on the side. It does not add any padding on top, so that still looks a little bit bad. So I'll always go ahead and just do a container here and just do a margin dash top. 20 pixels, that's fine. So look at this. It doesn't look too bad. Our table is right up in here, but that's okay. So we have Bootstrap loveliness now. So this was the first way of doing it. And this works great if you're going to host your application online or something. But the way that we're building these applications, everything else has been always hosted on your computer, right? On your box. So if you didn't have internet, you could work on everything. So let me show you the other way of doing this. Instead of doing it as a link inside your index.html, we're going to install this using npm. So if I do a npm install -- save of Bootstrap. This here will install it, and then we basically have to tell Angular to go ahead, because if we look at our source code here, Angular binds everything together. So what we see, this is the body that we have. We have our app root, then we have a script for our actual runtime, we have one for polyfills, and then it actually turns our JavaScript, our CSS into a styles.js. So it's actually faster to load JavaScript to load CSS inside of JavaScript, which surprises me, but apparently it is. So then we have some weird stuff in here, vendors.js and main, all these things. So this is everything that's included that Angular needs to run. So, but we don't see anything in here for Bootstrap or anything. Here's our tag we commented out. But what we want to do is tell Angular that, hey, when you're compiling these things and minifying them, add Bootstrap to the mix. So what we're going to do is inside of our project root here, so inside of our task runner, we're going to see an angular.js file. And in here, there's going to be a whole bunch of scary stuff in here. There is this block. You're going to just see projects, our task runner. We're going to see a bunch of stuff. But we're going to see something here called styles. Let me see. That's the only one here. So this here is saying, hey, go ahead and compile everything in sourcewack.styles.css. We're going to add to here. We're going to say also do node modules, whack bootstrap, whack dist, whack css, whack bootstrap.min.css. So I have that memorized because I've done this so many times. But you can always just open up your node modules, find, and let's actually make sure I did that right. Find bootstrap. Oh, I suck. So I did bootstrap. I have no idea what the heck bootstrap is, but it's probably not what I want. So, yep. I need bootstrap here. So try that again. Now I'm curious, what is bootstrap? Okay, cool. Deprecated package. Okay, so now Bootstrap is actually installed. Let's do that again. There's our Bootstrap. And of course, I'm going to refresh this. Okay, Bootstrap. dist css bootstrap.min.css. Okay, so that's exactly what we have. So if I save this and my code here, I have to, if I change that angular.json file, I have to restart my ngserve. So that's something that'll save you a lot of debugging, because you'll make changes and you're like, where's my Bootstrap? Why isn't it showing up? You'll refresh a bunch of times, but you have to actually just restart ngserve for that.
Yeah, fill in and start over.
Anytime you check this, that's automatic.
Right. You only need to
Oh, and cool. I did Bootstrap here too. Wow. Okay, Bootstrap. Let's try that again. Man, it is not my morning.
Not gonna work, Sergi.
I'm sorry?
You have bootstrap.min.css.
Do I really?
Yes.
Okay, obviously my T key is going out, so.
There you go.
Hey, live demos, right? This is what happens.
Yep.
Alright. You're human.
So it finished. Let's refresh this. And now, yay, we have Bootstrap goodness. So now if you look at our source here, view page source, we don't see like the bootstrap.min.css. It's actually going to just throw all those things together into styles here. So it's going to have a whole bunch. Actually, I don't know what happened to it now. Oh, there's like a bunch of crap because this thing here is not minified. So but Bootstrap will be in here, and my poor browser doesn't like that. It's trying to render it, but we'll just close that. So that's just a way that when you include external packages, Bootstrap or whatever else, it's always better to include it here, because then it gets minified and it turns into one big file instead of loading like dozens of smaller files. It will just load one big file. Do you guys have any questions on Bootstrap?
Nope. No.
Okay, I love it. So next thing we're going to talk about is single page applications and routing. So let's go ahead. We're going to start here. I'm going to just do this up here, do a quick demo, and then I'll have you guys try this yourselves. And we're we'll have time for that. That's okay here. So classroom, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an ng new, and I'm going to call this thing SPA, single page application. So, and where it asks me, do I want to add Angular routing? I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to use CSS. So make sure that whenever you want to use routing, you can always add routing after the fact. It's less fun because you have to do it manually. No big deal. But one thing, so while that's installing here, one thing I want you guys to recognize is single page applications. You'll see this here in a second. It's essentially different routes, different URL routes, control different components. What components show up where? So we're going to have a couple new tags. One called router outlet that lets us control where we want certain components to show up. So this is where we're going to have multiple components, right? So especially when we combine this with a single page application with Bootstrap, you can do some really cool things really quickly. So we can make like a simple little blog. We can do a lot of things. So, okay, so that finished. Let's just share my screen again. So this here finished. So this is my SPA here. I'm just going to do ngserve again. And let's go into the code and let's see what's the same and what's different. So here for my SPA, the only differences that you're going to see is we're going to have not only app.module.ts, we're going to have an app routing module.ts. So this here controls where things are routed, and right now we have no routes. So Angular is basically not going to routing is basically turned off. So it's in here, it's ready, but it's not enabled. So I did ngserve. Okay, awesome. So here's my single page application. Awesome. So let's do let's do a couple things here. First, I'm going to go ahead and add Bootstrap into here. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and paste it in here because I think I have the link. No, I don't. Cool. Nope. Okay. So this is definitely the faster way of doing it. Of just copying it in here, and since we're all online anyways, we'll do it here. Generally, you're gonna want to do this inside of our Angular.json, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is we're gonna first just add 2 components. So I'm gonna keep this really, really simple, and we're gonna add 2 pages. So I'm going to add, first of all, ng generate component. I'm gonna call page 1, and then page 2. So, and if I go into my app component, so notice one more thing, our app component, we have this router outlet that controls where things come out. So basically, whenever we're routing, this is where it gets controlled, and I'll explain that here in a second as well. So let's go to our app routing module. So this here, we're going to have our routes in here, and I'm going to clean this up a little bit just because it drives me nuts. And this here, I do not remember the format for this, so I think it is just our component and our route, but I'm going to just look this up because this is good for you guys to see. So Angular routing, sure, tutorial, whatever. We'll pick up routing and navigation. So we don't have to worry about any of this. We don't have to worry about any of this. So what we care about is the configuration here. So we see that our routes, and actually what we could have done, if you're more familiar with Angular, you can always, I'm holding down Control, and I can click on this, or I can right click on this and go to definition, and I can see that my routes here is just an array of routes. I can do the same thing. I can go into, and I see a route has a path that's a string, it has a component, it has a bunch of these things. So these are all the different properties a route can have. So what I care about is just path and component right now. So first thing we need to do is include our page 1 and page 2 components here. So I'm going to load those from my...
Hold on a second, Sergey.
Did you say you held down Control to get there?
If you hold down in VS Code, I'm pretty sure in Angular too, if you hold down Control and you click it, while you're holding down Control, it'll turn into a little finger. Does it not do that for you guys? See, I'm holding down Control and it's like a little finger.
It does it in Atom. I know that.
Okay, VS Code, it does it too. Okay, we'll look at that because that definitely saves a lot of trouble. So I'm going to copy my page 1 and page 2 component imports from app module, and I'm going to just paste them into my app routing module here. And then what I'm going to do is say path, and let's see what this format here for path is. If I go here and I see that there is no forward slash or anything, it is just whatever the name is, right? So I'm going to say just page 1. And my component is going to be page 1 component. And finally, I'm going to do the same thing for page 2. And this here should be enough for this to actually work. So we don't have any defaults. We don't have a lot of things for us. So if I go here, if I look at my columns, okay, I don't have any errors. So if I go to whack page 1, I should see my first page 1. Okay, page 1 works. Awesome. If I go to page 2, I'm going to see page 2 works. That is awesome. If I go to page 3, I should see a big fat error that cannot match any routes, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So Angular gives you a way to basically do a default, which is just an empty path, and then do this star path is the equivalent of page not found. So we can redirect that wherever we want. So I'm going to basically just copy both of these, and we'll just mangle them a little bit. So for our basic empty path, we're going to redirect that to, I just want that to go to page 1, right? So I'm going to just say page 1 is going to be kind of our home page. I want to go ahead and path match full, sure. I'm honestly not sure what that even controls. That's okay. And now we're going to do the same thing for the double asterisks. That instead of doing it not found, I'm actually just going to do the same thing. If instead of going to a different component, I'm just going to redirect you back to our page 1 component. So if you go somewhere it doesn't exist, you'll just get redirected back to page 1. No big deal. So let's look at this. So page 1 works. So if I go to page 3 now, I should get sent back to page 1. So this here, guys, is a single page application. But notice if we look at our network tab here, every time we redirect or we go to a different URL, it's actually loading everything over again. So if I do a preserve log here, I'm going to see that it's actually going to reload Bootstrap. It's going to reload all my stuff. So that's not how a single page application works, right? A single page application should have everything it needs already loaded client side, and we're just navigating in between. The reason this is happening is because we're not navigating inside of our application. We're not navigating by changing the URL. So what we need to do here is add a way for us to navigate inside our application. So back inside of our app component module, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 links. So I'm going to add 1 link. And whenever you're using Angular routing, we're not going to use href anymore. There is something called router link that we could do, and that will create this for us. So I'm going to say router link. Here is page 1. So I'm going to say page 1. And then I'm going to do a break here, and then I'm going to basically do the exact same thing for page 2. So, and then here we'll just do another break. So I should have page 1 and page 2. Now if you look at our network activity, you see that me going between these pages, it's not loading anything, from our server anymore. So this is a true single page application. This is not a very impressive single page application, right? Because there's nothing here. So what questions do you guys have so far before I continue?
I'm just taking it all in.
Okay. Linda?
Okay, so the reason that we would do this, when we talk about why we're doing this, just in general, I mean, I think I understand it, but can we go over that?
So I'm sorry. So I assumed everybody knew the pros and cons of a single page application. So let's talk about that. So right now, if there's a lot of pages that are not single page applications. So, and you guys are familiar with those. For example, Facebook is a single page application. So you click on a link, it does not reload the entire screen, right? It goes wherever you need to. But there are sites like any WordPress site. Like if you go to a blog, you click on something and the whole screen goes white or whatever, or there's this noticeable delay. Those are not single page applications. Those are just traditional websites. So, and they're reloading everything. So whenever, all of our applications before, every time, so let's look at this. If I refresh my application, we see that it took 4.1 megabytes to transfer. So, and it took, 700 milliseconds to load. This is because this is a debug version of, our Angular application, so there's a lot more crap. But what this means is every time, if we publish this to the internet, this means that if somebody loads or views your website on their mobile phone, it's going to use 4 megs of their bandwidth, right, of their data. So that's not really nice. And if this wasn't a single page application, every single time, like pretend we had 15 pages, every single time they would go to a different page, it would load another 4 megs because you're loading everything for this page, right? So with a single page application, what that does, it allows you to reuse everything, and Angular loads everything up front. So if I go to page 1, everything's already loaded in memory. So if I clear this, I'm seeing here that basically if I just load it the first time, everything is loaded. And let's make this a little bit more concrete, because this page 1 works, page 2 works. That doesn't really display that very well. So here, let's go into page 1 here, and I'm going to just do a h1 of about me. I'm just going to throw in some images here. Page 2 we'll leave alone. So I click on page 1 now. You see that, I can have as much or as little content as I want. Notice that I'm still loading that image because that image is pointed to like somewhere on the internet. I'm still loading that every single time I navigate to it. So it will actually still continue to load it. And that's okay. Actually, that's weird to load it twice and that's it. Okay. But single page applications just lets your application have everything inside of it. And essentially what you can do with the single page application, once it's loaded, you can basically disconnect your internet and it'll continue to work as long as there's no database calls. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the main benefits of a single page application is that it's generally much smaller, so it takes less bandwidth to load it the very first time, right? So, and then anytime the user interacts with it, it's instant. You click on, about me or items or something, you go there instantly. You're not waiting to send that request to the server and then back. You have it there because it's already on the client side. So that person, it's already in their browser. It's just hidden. So that's how that works. There's really no negatives of a single page application. It does make it a little bit harder to set up because basically if you were building a regular HTML like blog, you would have about me.html, you would have article1.html, article2.html. That's easy for beginners to create those different pieces. It takes a lot more work for somebody to create the Angular scaffolding, right, and set up a router and do this. So it takes more work, but it is definitely worth it. And Cheryl, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I'm just taking it in.
Okay. So one thing, let me make this a little bit more clear. So this here is kind of the bare minimum for a single page application. Usually what you would do is create one more component, call it menu, side nav. Here, I'll call mine nav. So for navigation. And what we... Thank you. Every time. Hey, I have one more class that I have one more opportunity to not screw that up and go 4 hours without forgetting that.
We're taking bets.
Okay. So here's my nav component. All I'm going to do is just move my page 1, page 2 stuff into it. Oops. So my actual navigation, right? So I'm going to just throw that in there, no big deal. And then what I'm going to do is, because I have Bootstrap in here, I'm going to turn this whole thing now into, this is my app component, div class row. And I'm going to say div class col 3, that's fine, col 3 here. And I'm going to go ahead and do app nav here. So my navigation will show up there. And then for the rest of it, for col 9, this is where my actual material will show up. So doing something like this, we see that my page now looks, it looks a lot better. I have page 1, page 2, so actually it's looking more like a real website. And I can have a lot of different things inside of each of these components. So let me also show you one more thing is, if we go into our page 1 component here, inside of my constructor, I'm going to... I'm just going to add a couple log messages where these things are initialized, just for you guys to see how this kind of works under the hood. So this is going to be page 1 component, ng on init. I'm going to just copy paste these for my page 2. So page 2 is obviously just going to be a page 2 component. So now if we look at our console, we're going to see, I have no idea why there's a scroll bar there. That's fine. Oh, you know what? Because I did not wrap my stuff inside a container. I broke my first rule of Bootstrap. And if you guys do want, so container will add these paddings, this margin on the sides to keep it within a certain screen width. If you wanted to go all the way to the to the edges, you can just do container dash fluid, and that will do the same thing, but we won't have the scroll bar. So just so you guys know. But so right now I'm on page 1. I see my page 1 component is initialized, and I see my page 1 component ng on init is called, meaning that it's displayed and it's ready to go. So I click on page 2. I see my page 2 component is initialized, and my ng on init is called. I go back to page 1. Again, I see my components initialized. So basically, what Angular is doing in the background, it is destroying this component and like initializing the next one whenever we go there. So it's very efficient with memory management as well. So if you have, because we had, for example, we had 50 different pages, and all these things, if every one of these components, they were created, it loaded something from a database, or it did something complicated, a bunch of animations, you wouldn't want all that stuff sitting in the client browser, just wasting resources, right? So Angular is very efficient with that. When you navigate around, it will destroy what was loaded before and initialize where you're actually going. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay, how about we, since, so the single page application, that's the biggest piece I want to show you guys, so I want you guys to actually play with this. It's 10 o'clock. Do you guys want to do maybe 15 minutes and set up the very, very basics of just even what I did here with page 1 and a page 2?
Sounds great.
Okay, how about we do that? And I will leave this. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, I will leave this open. I'm not even sure what would be helpful for you guys here. Well, how about that? Do the same thing that I did with just the page 1, page 2, and the navigation. Oops, let me close my node modules. Okay. I'll leave this open so you guys can see how the router link works. Oh, actually, I think I could do a couple better. So my app component. Let's see. So there's my app component. There's my navigation, and page 1. There's nothing interesting in there. Oh, and my routing module. I will open that up as well. This is almost a good idea. Okay, we'll just leave these two here open. And Seth, you'll help them?
Yep.
Okay. And remember that you'll create a new application, and you'll have to say routing yes for that. Enable routing.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead. So my goal for the rest of class is for us to connect our backends. You guys remember Node and MongoDB and everything? For us to connect that and to create something in class, like a simple blog, for example, and have that actually render things from a database, from a backend, and for us to turn into a single page application and be able to navigate through it. So, how much do you guys remember of your backend code?
Been a little while.
Been a while? Okay.
I remember we did a task.
Well, this here, I would like to create one. I'm debating whether we should do this together or if I do it first. And how about we'll just do that? I just do it first, and we'll kind of brush off our backend code, and then we'll have you guys dive into it. So, and basically, our goal would be to create something like a really simple. Even if we redo our task list with a backend, I think that'll be great. We'll just do that. We'll create our task tracker again, but with a full backend, so we can dust that off. Do you guys have your code somewhere where it's usable and stuff?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's. I think does that sound a good idea for you guys? We'll show how those two pieces connect.
Yes.
Okay. Let's do that. And I totally forgot to mention, guys, that Susan's coming today to class, so.
Bye.
Right here. Let me share my screen here. So, in our task tracker, it won't be a single page. But technically, it is a single page application. There's just no routing or anything like that. So that's okay. Here, I'm gonna close all these things here. Okay, so let's close these things. So first thing that we need to do, let's go. I'm gonna pull up my task tracker. This here, we want to reorganize our code just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of these things around because I want my task tracker to be the root of my entire project. Because I basically need a place to have the server code as well. So I'm going to move all this into like a client folder and then have another server folder here. So I'm going to, can I do that? Okay, awesome. So here's my task tracker. I'm going to take everything here. That's totally fine. Create another folder called client, and we're going to move all this stuff into client. So, and then we're going to have one more folder I'm going to create called server, and I am sharing my screen, right? Oh, nailed it. Okay, awesome. So right now nothing has changed except I just reorganized my code just a little bit. So my task tracker now, I just have a client, where client is always your Angular side. So it's just, that's just what's called in the industry, right? Client server. That's how it works. So server will always be our node code, our MongoDB and Mongoose, so it'll always live there, and client will be our Angular and our Bootstrap and things like that. So far, so good? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually open a couple more tabs. I'm going to go into my client here. I'm just going to do an npm start. Let's see where I left off here. And then I'm going to also open up one more tab here and go into my server, which is completely blank. There's nothing there, which is okay. So what we want to do is move all this so it's hosted in on a database, right, somewhere. So for my task tracker. So let's go ahead and dust this off. So we know for our backend server, and we could, guys, go ahead and copy all this code from like the previous module and stuff. I'm going to just recreate it and re-talk through it just so you guys have it and we can see it again, right? I think that would be much more beneficial than copying and pasting code. So I'm going to create inside of my server, I'm going to create a server.js because it's super, specific. And we're going to have const. So first thing I need is Express, because I know I'm going to, Express is used to create a web server, right? So we can host things. So I'm going to do this first, and this is going to be require Express. And the next thing I'm going to, first of all, let's go ahead and just take these baby steps with Express. First thing I need to do is install Express, right? Because if I require it, and then if I do like a node mon for server, I'm going to see a big fat arrow, or if I save it, I will see a big fat error here. Okay, so if I spell correctly, then I should see another big fat error. Okay, cannot find module Express. And you guys should remember that that's because we need to install, right? So I'm going to do an npm install --save Express. So while I'm here, I'm also going to install body parser, because we're going to need that in a little bit. So Express is installed. So now we need to create our application. So I'm going to do const app equals Express. And then I can just do app.listen. I'm going to listen on port 8000. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm just going to do a console.log of task tracker server listening at. Super specific here. Okay. So if I run this now, my nodemon server, where it'll restart every time. So I see my comment, I can click on my link, and I see cannot get whack. Okay, awesome. That's getting this is better than just getting a blank page, right? That Chrome can't connect. So we know that we have something working here. And before we bring Mongo into this, so let's just do a refresher of how to do our different pieces, right? So this is basically all we need to create a web page. So, or create a web server. So I'm going to go ahead and do, if I do a app.get on like the root, our request, our response handlers, and I can do res.json of hello or whatever. So that's what I'm going to send back anytime someone goes to the root of my server. So if I refresh this, that's what I see, right? Pretty cool, very easy. So what we want to do is, because this is for our task tracker, we want to create a backend route that will give us all of our tasks, and then another one that will give us our different categories, right? So we'll take it one step at a time. We won't worry about the categories right now. We'll do just the tasks. So for the tasks, I'm going to create a whack tasks that is going to give us our tasks. For right now, we're just going to hard code these in here because we're going to take this in baby steps. So I'm going to go to my client side here, and guys, please tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast or you feel like I'm glazing over something. My default speed is fast, so you guys need to just slow me down. Even if I'm not in a hurry, I'm still going fast. Ask Seth how I drive. So I'm going to create my tasks here, and then we're just going to do a res.json of my entire tasks array here. So, and I'm purposely now trying to slow myself down. So if I refresh this, I'm going to see nothing because I need to go to whack tasks. And now I have my entire array of items, right? So just to make sure that this is from the server, we're going to do another name, server task. Category, this will be work. Actually, this is technically school. What we're doing, okay, coders. Priority, server tasks aren't really important. And done will be false. Okay. So now we should see server task up here. Awesome. And then once this actually is loading from our backend, we'll see server task here, right? Because right now our front end code is still using its array here. So there's a couple different, as usual, right? There's like 100 different ways that we can do something. So we can create something called an HTTP service that will basically do all of the server-side code back and forth. It will do it for us, or we can dump that code in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a service so it's separate from our components. Because right now, if we later okay, I'm not sure if we'll have time today, but we still haven't actually even done like parent-child components or anything like that, and that's where the real fun stuff happens. We might have time. We'll see. We're doing good so far. I'm actually surprised. I didn't know if we were going to fit in back-end code at all, so I'm really excited that we get to do this here. So I'm going to create all my server-side code. All my code that talks to my server-side is going to live in a separate area. It's not going to be inside of our task list component. So what I'm going to do is on my client side here, I'm going to create another tab, and I'm going to do an ng. I'm going to actually just write this out here, generate, and this time I'm going to generate a service, and I'm going to call this. I can do a couple things. Actually, I'm going to call this a task service in case we have other pieces, right? So I could have called it HTTP service. It doesn't really matter. We see that it creates a task service at spec file. We ignore those. That's just if we're really good developers, we write unit tests for everything, but we're not, and that's okay right now. So if I refresh this, I'm going to see task service, oops, not the spec file, the task service.ts here. This here, notice that there's not much in here, right? This allows us to inject something into our constructor, which we haven't even done yet, guys. There's a lot of stuff in Angular that you haven't seen that's really cool, but it allows us to inject our service and run code that is inside of our service. So right now, even if I take these, so let's do this without even bringing in the back end here. I'm going to take our tasks out of here for a second, and I'm going to move them into my task service, and I'm going to create a function here. Get tasks. All this is going to do is return this array of tasks. That is all this thing here is going to do. So there's no, I'm not worried. Oh, what happened here? Okay, I'm not worried about HTTP or anything going on in my server right now. I just created a get tasks function that is inside my task server. So what I need to do now is have my task list component get something out of my task service, right? And we see that we have a bunch of, like, this.tasks is saying that we have a bunch of errors. That's okay. We're actually going to go ahead and just define tasks. And we're going to say that it is an array of any. That's all we're going to do. So we're going to just say, and we'll actually go ahead and set this to empty array. That's fine. So this here is, we're just saying that is an empty array. And just to avoid errors for now, we're just going to say that the type is any. And I think actually this should be fine, just doing this. Okay, so we don't even have to give it a type. That's fine. So far, so good, right? So if we rerun our front end code, nothing has changed except we have 0 tasks. Everybody with me so far?
And we have 0 tasks because it's on the service and it's not on.
Yep, exactly. So now what we want to do is bring this service so we can call things into our task list component. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import this. I think actually if I start typing it in the constructor, it'll import it for me, but just in case everybody's using, like, some people are using Atom, some are VS Code, I'm not sure if it'll work across the board. So we're just going to import this. I called it task service, and I'm going to import this from, now notice I'm inside this task list directory, right? And my task service is one directory up. So I need to go period, that means back one directory, whack task.service. So that's working now because I see task service is declared, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put this in my constructor. So I'm going to say this is where we're forced to use a little bit of TypeScript, and that's okay. We're going to say this is private, and we're going to say that it's going to be called task service. Notice my T is lowercase here, and the type is task service. So let's give me that. That's okay. So anytime this is called, guys, dependency injection, because our task list component is now dependent on task service. And this here is saying that, hey, this is our variable name, and we need to tell Angular that what type of variable it needs to inject. If I just do something like this, this will work, but it has no idea the task service is going to use my task service here. Because I can just call this thing TS. It doesn't matter what I call it. How it knows to use task service is the type of task service. So stay with me here for 1 second. Now I'm going to say this.tasks, our local task in our component, is going to equal this.ts, our task service, which I'll rename back to task service here in a second, and we see that we only have one method, right, inside of our task service called get tasks. So that's what I'm going to run. So I'm going to say that A is equal to this. And now notice if I remove this, colon task service, all of this, it's actually an any, so it's going to think I could have this, but it's not going to work. It's going to say can't resolve. That's okay. Because anytime you inject something in a constructor, for a component means it has to have a type. So I'm going to change this back to task service and tell it that, hey, this is a task service component, and just do this here. So just declaring our variable, giving it the type. I can go in here and I can see here's all my items again, just like I had in before, and this here is working exactly the same. So far, so good? How about, guys, we take this in really baby steps, so that way, because we're going to go through a lot of different pieces, how about we just take 10 minutes and you guys add the task service component and create a get tasks function. I think this would be really good to just do this in bite-sized pieces. Are you guys okay with that?
That sounds great, yep.
So here, I'm going to just show my, just leave this up here for how I did this, and if you guys just basically just emulate this, and don't forget that we have to do this here, ng generate service task. So I'm going to just leave these little pieces up here, and I don't think this will take you guys, this probably shouldn't even take 10 minutes, but there's a lot of moving parts, so I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with this.
Now, on our original task, we did not have routing. Did we add that?
No, that is okay. On our task, whatever I call this thing, task master task. task tracker, we don't need routing on this one, so that is okay.
They will have to reorganize their files, though.
Oh, let's skip that right now. Let's just let them do it like this. Unless they want to do that now, that's fine. If you think that they can move stuff around without, it getting lost in the shuffle, then yeah, we may as well just do that now too. I guess you're right.
Okay.
No, I just create a new file. A folder.
Share, record this. Okay, so they just got done creating their task service on the front end and moving their tasks in there. So now we're gonna go ahead and create the backend node side to just host the tasks, even though our front end isn't going to use this yet, but we're just setting the stage for this. So if we go to localhost 8000, whack tasks, we're gonna see all these tasks here. So Seth, how about we'll take a few minutes and just recreate this here.
Okay.
I'm going to leave this open because basically there's any Mongo in here. There's nothing like that. We're just copying the tasks from our task service, putting it in here. I added extra one here, just a dummy. And that's it. So this will be a good refresher for you guys. How about 15 minutes?
Yep.
Hopefully no pitfalls.
So do they need to be removed from the service? Or do they
Nope, the service stays the same. So we're going to pause on the front end, and we're going to move now to doing back-end server-side code. So basically,
For now, leave it there. You just need to make a server.js. basically.
yeah, exactly. So
The
In the
server
server.
folder, right?
And just add a file. You don't need to
all
generate
right, here. So everybody now can go to a back-end server that's running, go to whack tasks, and get back-end tasks, right?
Yep.
Okay, so now the next step is to connect our fabulous front end with our back end. So let's go to our front end, to our task service on the front end. Okay, there we go. Can you guys still see that?
Yep.
We're going to use something called HTTP client. So I'm going to import HTTP client from Angular whack HTTP. No, Angular core whack HTTP. Okay, cool. I have no idea where I'm importing. So let's look this up. Angular 6 HTTP client. Where does it live? Oh, common whack HTTP, of course. Okay. Common whack HTTP. Okay. So just like we have to inject our task service into our task list component, we're going to have to inject HTTP client into our task service here. So I'm going to do private HTTP is just going to be my HTTP client. So now instead of this here getting get tasks returning an array, we're going to change this up where get tasks is going to return a promise that resolves into an array of our task our tasks. So first thing, just so we can see what's going on here, I'm going to go ahead and output whatever tasks are on our task list component. And now over here, instead of returning this array, we are, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete that because we're not going to need that. I am going to return this.http.get. And now if we look at .get, this isn't very clear, but it basically takes a URL, then for the first argument, then takes options, and it should, somewhere in here, it'll tell us that it returns an observable, which we haven't seen before, but that's okay, because we can actually convert that to a promise. So I'm going to get now, and we're going to, so this is also one more thing that we're going to run into, that we're going to have to fix is, we're going to try to get this, if I try getting this from our back end here, so we should be able to do that. And then I'm going to say .toPromise to convert this thing into a promise. And let's just see what this looks like now. So if I run this, I'm going to get a big fat error saying that there is no provider for HTTP client. So just like we had to do with our form control, our forms module, we have to also inject HTTP client module. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to import HTTP client module from @Angular whack common whack HTTP, and then same thing, we just throw this into our imports. I'm going to save that. This should refresh, and awesome. So now we have a different error. We have, okay, well, there's a bunch of errors, but the one that I'm looking at right now is that this access to XML HTTP request at blah 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 has been blocked by CORS, which is cross origin resource sharing. So this is something that the web came out with probably, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. 10 years, that sounds good. To prevent sites from accessing different sites. So for example, if you were on your bank account, right? On bank.com, for example, this would prevent another website, for example, malicious site for Facebook or something that got access to your banking cookie, and that way it couldn't send requests on your behalf to your bank, because that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. So this here is actually a good thing that this is happening. It's just a pain for us right now. There's a couple of different ways to handle this. And this here, guys, this is basically saying that because I'm trying to access localhost :8000 WAC API, but I'm trying to do it from localhost :4200, those two are not different, or I'm sorry, they're not the same site. They're different sites. So that's why it's being blocked. If I was trying to access this here from localhost :8000, it would let me. But because the ports are different, it won't let me. So there's a couple different ways to fix this. The easiest way is to have our backend proxied through our front end. And I'll explain what that means. Basically, instead of having to go to this crazy URL here, we are just going to go to, and I put WAC API here, but we're just going to go to WAC tasks. Or actually, we're going to go ahead and just do API WAC tasks. And then we just need to tell our front end, our Angular, that if you see WAC API, go ahead and proxy and send that to our backend server. So the way that we do that is we are going to create a proxy config file. And this thing here, I never remember the format of it, so I am going to just steal that from another project. No big deal. You can Google for this, you'll find it somewhere, but it's probably going to be easier to just use the one that we're going to use here. So proxy config here. Okay, so actually I could have totally guessed that. Okay, so it wasn't that bad. So this is just saying that if you go to WAC API, we are going to forward all those requests to localhost 8000. So we need to do this, and then we have to make one more change. Not only do we have to add this proxy config file, but inside of our package.json, whenever we run npm start, it runs this ng serve for us. We just need to add one more option in there, and that is proxy config equals proxy-config.json. I believe that's what it is. You know what? Let's try. So here, I'm going to restart my front end. That's okay. We'll ignore those errors, and we're going to see if this works. If that doesn't work, we'll try something else. Failed to compile. Okay, cool. Well, it's not gonna like what I'm doing here, because this here is now returning a promise. Notice it says it returns a promise of an object, so I can't really do this here. So I'm going to do just create to a local variable, because I just want to see what the output is. So let's see if that works now. Okay, so that compiled. So I refresh now, and I see. Okay, I see an error there. No big deal. That is because we're going to, from 4200 WAC API WAC tasks, it's trying to actually forward that to our backend to API WAC tasks. So we have to change that around a little bit. There is a way in here somewhere to do that, but the easiest thing that we're going to do to make this work is just have this listen on API WAC tasks. So let's refresh this. That works. So let's refresh this here and make sure that we're on the same page. Okay, awesome. So now I see. Okay, I see something weird, but I kind of see my results here, so this isn't too bad. Let's figure out what this actually means. So zone aware promise. I don't care about zones. I just need the value of this promise. So, oh, actually, that is totally fine. That is just because. So right now, guys, this is all working more or less how it should. So if we go back to our task list here, we have to, because this is a promise, we have to wait on that promise. So what I'm going to do here is say, remember, if we wait on a promise, we have to use .then. So I'm going to say .then tasks, and I'm going to just move this code inside of here. So if I do this, then I can easily, this sort tasks, that's not going to do anything because it's going to try to sort an empty array. That's okay. If I refresh this, I'm going to still see nothing, but I see tasks now, all my tasks from the back end. So this is really good. So all I need to do now is say this.tasks equals tasks. So, and object is not assignable, blah, blah, blah. Did you mean to use? That is okay. That is just because this doesn't know what this is resolving to. So we can basically force this to work, and I'm just going to say this is going to return a promise, and it's just going to be an array of any objects. And it is not going to like that. Okay, let's leave that alone for 1 second. Let's go back here. There's a problem with the live demo. So here, let me turn this into just a any for a second and see if this will let us. Okay, so saying that this returns just a type any. So this is TypeScript when it tries to protect you from yourself, and we're not giving TypeScript everything that we're actually using. So there's a lot of stuff that we're leaving out because we don't have any interfaces on any of these types. And this is why it's complaining, because we're not giving it enough information. So but if I save that and I run that, I see that indeed I have all of my information from my backend. Here's my server task that is a priority 1, right? And just to prove that all this works, if I go on my server and say that this server task is a priority 5 now, and then I just refresh this, I will see my server task at the very, very top. So we're finally getting tasks from our backend. So let's stop right here, guys, and have you guys do the same thing what I just did here. And there's a couple moving parts, right? So we have to create this proxy config. Oh, we have to add this -- proxy config equals proxy config.json. And then we have to add in our HTTP client module. And then finally our task service, we have to inject our HTTP client and return the actual tasks from the server. How do you guys feel about that? I can't see in your faces.
Cheryl, I took some notes, so we'll follow my notes, but I don't know. Yeah,
Well, how about we do this together? I will stay right here with you guys.
I understand
Well, let's take it step by step then. So the first thing that we need to do, so here, I'm going to close all these. So let's do this. So the first thing that we need to do is into our task service, let's add this HTTP client. So let's inject that first. So we're going to import it first right here. So this is us importing it. Then we're going to go ahead and inject it into our constructor. So, and make sure we have this private keyword, because if you don't have that, you're going to run into a whole lot of problems and it's going to take you forever to debug. And that is something really weird that I believe TypeScript is responsible for. I have not actually researched why, but just trust me, just make sure that you have that in there. So let's do this first.
Thank you for holding our hand on this.
Yeah, no problem. So, and as soon as you guys have this, remember that we're going to need to add in the, oh, I can split this way. That's awesome. We're going to have to inject our HTTP client module as well. If you'll notice, we're using HTTP client here. So the module is just going to have, module added onto it. So it's pretty predictable of what's actually going to happen. And let me know when you guys have this here.
Oh, you're gonna change that. Yes. Oh, I can. It is your return, but not that. Right.
Okay, so everybody now has HTTP client injected in their task service and inside of their app module. And did you guys also inject this in your constructor and add the get tasks or modify get tasks to use this?
Yes, we did.
I love it. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do, last thing, second or third or fourth to last, but we have to go ahead and create this proxy-config.json file. So we have to create this, and this here is, let me just Slack this actually, because why not? Right? That's what Slack is for. So this is our proxy-config.json.
Does it matter where you put that folder at?
What do you mean, this file? It has to be in the same place in the root, basically. Notice that like we have client, it has to be inside of client, so it's going to be right here, and then we're going to have to modify our package.json file, and we just have to basically add this into our package.json. So let me go ahead and actually I'll select this as well.
On this proxy file, does it matter where you put it?
It needs to go basically in line with where your package stuff is.
Right here?
Yeah, I mean, just that the same. Oh, it is on the same level. Like, should be fine.
Let me know when you guys have that. So now that we have this piece here, the last thing that we need to do is in our task list component, we have to just change this around. So before, what we had here, and I can't undo this. What we had before was this dot tasks equals this dot task service dot get tasks, right? And then we had this dot sort tasks. So that's what we had here before. So we have to change this around because now get tasks is a return a promise, right? So we basically want to move this around. We're saying that we just want to call get tasks, then assign this tasks to equals tasks that it returns. And again, this is going to freak out because of TypeScript. That's okay. All we're going to do is cast, say that tasks is a type of any, and finally move this sort tasks inside of here. So doing all this, we'll have our server-side tasks show up in our task list.
You want them to go ahead and do that?
Yes, yep.
I think they're gonna. Your server.
But I went back to that tutorial and the pictures. How they
Go ahead.
the nice difference.
I'm watching this. So guys, we had a problem that everybody was getting a 404 error, and it is because they were running ng serve and not npm start. So we changed inside of their package.json the start script to run ng serve -- proxy config. You would either have to type that out manually, or you would have to just run npm start. So what we're doing instead is our client is always being started with npm start. And that basically runs proxy config. So basically we run npm start and we see that it is running ng serve here for us. Everybody else? Hey guys, okay, so we're having one problem with proxy config not working well at all, so we're trying to debug this, but we ran out of time, so essentially we almost got done with everything that we needed, just serving the content, but what was left was to essentially be able to change the content in the backend server and then finally move it to MongoDB. So what we'll do for homework today, I'll assign it, but we'll probably just combine Bootstrap, our actual single page application, with our router, and then finally merge that with a backend server. So I'll come up with, we'll probably make a blog site with articles and stuff. So, and I'll go through and give systematic instructions on that.